This is X8 Anderson, and welcome again to the Principal Podcast. Today, I am thrilled to have Cheryl Knowlton with me on the show. Cheryl is the CEO. She's the Chief Energy Officer at Dynamite Productions. I've got to tell you, I don't know if I've met someone as driven and as passionate in just getting stuff done as Cheryl. When she decides she's going to do something, she just goes full bore, and you better watch out because she's coming. She began speaking at an early age. She's never stopped. She speaks she speaks all over the country. I know she's written multiple books. She's ran 31 half marathons and is going for even more. I could go on, but I just want to welcome Cheryl Knowlton. Thank you for being on the show with us today.
Oh, Xane, thank you so much for having me. And it should be noted that you were an amazingly fabulous guest on my podcast, Magnifying Brilliance, and I'm so happy about that. So everybody should hop over after you're done listening to this episode and check that one out because it was high octane. It was fabulous.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for having me on that. I appreciate that. So one of the things we were talking about before this, I know you have daughters who are independent, and somehow, and they're successful, they're independent, they go for their dreams, they go for what's important, what they're passionate about. How did you raise daughters who are, I guess, frankly, like you?
Oh gosh, and that's a double-edged sword, right? So I am incredibly blessed to be the mother of four amazingly beautiful adult daughters. My oldest daughter is 35, and my youngest is 25. They are all married. They're all mothers. My second child has four of her own. My oldest has two, and my youngest has two, and my third is the only one who is not able to biologically have children of her own, but she has adopted two beautiful Native American boys through the foster care program in the state of Utah, which, if anybody knows anything about adopting Native American children, it is nothing short of a miracle. So they are a miracle. They are supposed to be in our family, and we absolutely love them. Having been adopted myself, I especially appreciate that. And then I inherited five incredibly amazing bonus children when I married my sweetheart in 2022 or 2020. Wow. 2002. 2002. All the years we'll get it right. We just celebrated our 21st anniversary early this year. So having four independently minded, and now incredibly talented, brilliant daughters of my own. How did I do that? That's a great question, and I think they came from heaven that way, in large measure, and then I think I came from heaven that way, and so just them watching me, observing me, living life. Their father, bless his heart, he's since passed away 2 years ago, almost to the day. He had bipolar disorder, and so I was often a single parent long before I was a single parent. He was not necessarily able to really be a great parent with me, and so my children's independence probably came a lot from circumstance and life, and the way that Heavenly Father sent them to this earth. So they're all amazing.
Isn't that interesting? I think sometimes, you mentioned that you were adopted. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. What would you like to know?
Tell us about that. You say, can you tell us the story?
Yeah, sure. I was born in the late 1960s in California, in the Bay Area, to two teenagers who were not in any position to get married. My biological mother prayed so hard for a miracle in being able to keep me, and she that miracle did not wind up coming out in quite the way that she wanted it to initially. She was the third child of 7 of a Mennonite preacher, and his very livelihood depended on his ability to provide for his family. And he also taught school. And so third child, age 16, getting pregnant was not in the cards. He did not deal with that well. She was extremely close to him prior to my coming on the scene. And after that, it really changed the dynamic of their relationship, unfortunately. So after I was born, she kept praying for a miracle. She waited for the last hour of the last day, 6 weeks after I was born, before she finally signed the papers under threat of being disowned by her family and not having any place to live. And there wasn't a lot of support for single moms back in the late 1960s, not like there is today. And so she signed the papers, and I went from living in a foster care situation for 6 weeks to the arms of my joyful parents, my adoptive parents, who I was their only child. They had tried for 13 years to have me, and they were nothing short of over the moon when I came into their lives. Copernicus called and verified I became the very center of the universe. For them. Yeah, for them, for sure.
Interesting. So here you have this very unique upbringing, and then as your dad, can you share more what happened after that? Your dad?
Yes. So for a little more than 4.5 years, the Copernicus situation remained very firmly intact, and life was perfect and glorious and wonderful, and I was adorable and charming, and everything was perfect. And they weren't wealthy by worldly standards, but I had everything that I wanted and needed in spades. Love and affection and attention and just joy. And grandparents on both sides who lived close by. I mean, everything was really fabulous. I'm so grateful that I'm blessed with such a solid, strong memory of that, because it came to an end. And shortly before my 5th birthday, my angel mother became one herself when she passed away. For me, it felt very sudden, from a brain tumor that by the time they found it, it had metastasized and had gone everywhere in her body, and there was nothing medically that they could do. And so my poor dad, bless his heart, this is not what he signed up for. It's not what he expected. He didn't know how to navigate, how to handle it. And he started dating rather quickly. He went to Parents Without Partners, or an organization like that. It was a Christian-based organization, and he started dating. He dated a lot of women, some of whom were awesome and some of whom were not. And unfortunately for both of us, he would tell you that if he were here, I'm not saying anything we wouldn't say if he were right here. He married one who was in the not category, and she announced after they were married that she detested children and didn't want to have any, and suggested to him that he return me to the adoption agency like I was a puppy that didn't work out, because after all, I wasn't really his. And yeah, no way. I was still the center of his universe. And with that idea being thrown out, she then suggested that I be sent off to a boarding school in Colorado. Colorado's a beautiful, wonderful state. I love it. I don't know why she picked that, but whatever. 3 states away from California, and I don't know, whatever. When he said no to that also, I believe it was divine orchestration that they found a family that lived right around the corner that had a son that was just older than I was, about 3.5 years older, and a daughter who was about 6 weeks younger than I was. And they were looking to babysit a child before and after school, and that's how that started. I wound up living with them for 9.5 years during the week and coming home on weekends. So, yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Staying overnight during the week and only coming home on weekends?
That is correct. Weekends and holidays. I came home to be with my dad. My stepmother still wouldn't look at me or talk to me or have anything to do with me for the vast majority of that time. Yeah, I didn't become human to her until I was about 17.
Interesting. You know, I've got this theory, Cheryl, and let me just tell you my theory. Sometimes we have these really, really hard things happen to us. And my theory is that the stuff that's most painful for us at some point becomes our superpower.
Ooh, I love that.
if we have these things they're paying. I mean, who loses their mom when they're 4 or 5 years old like you did? That's got to be something that's extremely traumatic to a 4 or 5-year-old, and then has a stepmom who doesn't want to talk to you. And now, in my view, from where I stand after hearing this story, I see you've become a well-known public speaker who people actually pay to speak, to lots of money to hear you speak. And
who would have thought that when I was 6.5 years old?
That's right. So some, so here you have this stuff that frankly sounds very painful, and now you've let your pain become your superpower, and I think that's amazing. And now you've become a very independent. You're successful. You've chosen a career that takes, let's be honest, to be a public speaker, and you're successful at it. That takes bravery. That takes a high level of drive. It takes a high level of passion to get it done. And now you've raised daughters who can do the same thing. My hat's off to you, literally. I mean, I don't have a hat right now, but you hear what I'm saying? But when we were talking about this, you mentioned something maybe we could touch on. You mentioned when your daughters would want to do something, when they wanted to have something, you would ask them questions, you would allow them to work for it, you wouldn't just give it to them. Can you talk a little bit about that, perhaps?
I owe that to my dad. If I wanted something, I remember the first thing I really wanted that was beyond the normal allowance of earning that was I really wanted, I saw the movie Ice Castles. I was probably 13 or 14 years old. And I thought, I want that. I want to do that. I want to be that. And I wanted ice skating lessons. And so my dad said yes, and I hadn't done anything like that really ever, and so he was excited and supportive. And the first thing I really wanted was my own pair of ice skates. I didn't want to rent them. I wanted my own. And he told me, absolutely, if you want anything in life, you can have it if you're willing to work hard and earn it. And I thought, okay, that's fantastic. I love that. And I know not everyone heard that childhood message growing up. And I have a lot of friends and clients who had a totally different money story growing up. I certainly have my own messed up version of things, despite how awesome he was with that. And so I tried to pass that along to my daughters to let them know that anything was possible. If they wanted dance lessons, they could do it. And we had them doing crazy stuff. They became so creative that I remember we have a fairly long driveway. They would go out in the afternoons on hot days and sell water to the neighbors. And it says a whole lot about our amazing neighbors that they would come and they would pay money to buy water and Dixie cups from our girls and tell our girls that we had the best tasting water in the whole neighborhood. And they would come in, Mom, Charlie Smith says we have the best tasting water in the whole neighborhood. And, he'd give them $5 or whatever. And they thought that that was just so amazing. And so they learned that no was not in our vocabulary, that it was just a matter of finding a way and finding a different way to go after whatever it is that you want, and just pour a whole bunch of tenacity on it and light that on fire, and given enough time, it'll happen.
Talk about that tenacity. You just pile on a whole bunch of tenacity and light it on fire. Love that.
That's code for stubbornness. That's code for not giving up, right?
Love that. You also talked a little bit about how you would allow them to fail gracefully. What do you mean by allowing people to fail gracefully? What do you mean by that?
I feel like I have not done enough, given myself enough grace and space when I have had failings in things that mattered to me. Everything from professional failings to the failure of my marriage, it's tough, and failure is not fun. But when they would have something that didn't work out for them the way that they hoped that it would, just trying to be there with them. And instead of trying to fix it, and instead of trying to kiss it better and put a Band-Aid on it and pat them on the head and tell them to run along, that it'll be okay, I tried to be there with them and make it safe for them to express their disappointment, their sorrow, their grief. One of my daughters was probably 10 days, 2 weeks away from her wedding when she called it off. She called it off. And she was devastated by that for a while, even though she knew that it was the right choice. How many times have we had opportunities to leave a job or a relationship and we knew it was the right choice, and yet it's still really hard? And so holding space for the both, that I call it the both and I usually am wearing an ampersand necklace to remind me that it's okay to have the both and. It's okay to grieve the relationship and be excited about what's next. It's okay to be sad about what didn't work out and say, okay, what can I learn from this? Where are the gifts in this messy situation? And to just be there and listen with them. And then there were a lot of parties, we call them parties in the car. We had a lot of dance parties in the car, a lot of very loud Backstreet Boys and NSYNC in the car. And when they realized that not every parent does that when they would drive with other people, I remember my second daughter, Bryn, she was like, Mom, other moms don't do what we do. And I'm like, yeah, that's too bad for them. And just creating the space for sadness, the space for joy. I mean, like Ecclesiastes, there really is a time for love and for joy and for pain and for all of it.
Right. And I've heard it said that there's 3 things that are important when we're trying to teach our children: example, example, and example. And that's the good news and the bad news, right?
Yes.
As far as having daughters who are independent and go-getters, I think you showed that example, and I think making it fun, like you said, that's awesome.
Well, let's talk about example for a second, because I love that, and that's very true. We are all always an example. Whether it's a good example or a bad example is a whole nother conversation. But yeah, and I've certainly have had my moments of helping them to see who they did not want to be and what they didn't want to have. And I had that growing up as well with my stepmom. Like, whoa, I never want to be a smoker. I'd never been around anyone who smoked. And all of a sudden now there's this woman living in our new house and she smokes, and I didn't want that. So deciding who and what we don't want to be is a decision for all of us. And we're all examples all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Backing up just a little bit, what are some of the kinds of questions you would ask when you're trying to get to help your daughters move along? Some of the questions, what would you say if they said, "Hey, I want a new car. I want something like," how would you kind of guide them to be independent? What would you say or do with the questions?
I would back it out and, okay, what kind of car do you want? And okay, how much is that going to cost? And okay, how many hours a week do you need to work doing what in order to get that? So yeah, questions like that, let them come up with the answer.
And let them think it through. I love that. Guide them instead of saying, "Hey, this is what you need to do. Let me ask. Let's let you ask." I like that. Well, Cheryl,
Yep.
this is awesome. Is there any advice that you would give to parents who want to raise independent, awesome, go-getting, tenacious children?
Sometimes that's going to hurt. And sometimes they will run to you, and sometimes they will run from you and your advice and your beliefs. And that's tough. And just seeing the bigger picture and seeing our children through the eyes of love, always, regardless of whether their decisions align with ours. And it's harder when they're adults. When they're kids, when they're teenagers, we can ground them, whatever. But when they're older and they make a decision and they're hurting from it, that's tough. That's really tough.
Not as much you can do on that. Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your sharing that with us. I heard someone say, no matter the question, love is the answer. And
love is the answer, always.
Being able to just show love even when they may make decisions that are hard for you to watch because you love them so much, but just keep loving them.
Absolutely. And ultimately, that my experience is if they know if they really truly know that you love them no matter what, and you're there for them to hold space for them and be with them and not judge them or criticize them or make them feel bad about their decision, and just, yeah, kiddo, that's really hard. That's really
Right.
hard. And doing that from a place of love is, they will come back. They will.
Now, Cheryl, tell us what you're involved with now. You actually help people along to try to achieve their dreams. Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing currently?
I love that. I love that. Yes. I help individuals to connect with and own their story, as I have done that work myself, so that they can unmute themselves and speak up and speak out and deliver their own command performances in high stakes conversations, whether that's with a partner or a spouse or with a child, or whether that is them wanting to take and own their next big stage. And whether that's with shareholders or to become a public speaker and build a public speaking business. I love coaching and helping individuals to do that every step of the way. And for me, a huge piece of that has been the study of personality and identity, and answering the question, who are you really? Given my background, did my personality come to me from my adoptive parents? I mean, nature versus nurture. Did it come from my birth family? Did it come from my heavenly parents? Where did I come from? And just being able to answer that question and helping people gain the clarity and awareness about their strengths so that they can lean into and lead from their strengths is game changing in both personally and professionally.
I love that. How can people get a hold of you if they want to get some of you? Some of your inspiration, your coaching.
They can go to my calendar scheduling app, Clarity with Cheryl with a C.com, and schedule time. I love meeting people from all over the country and other countries, and learning about their story, and just hearing how I can help and support them in any way. We have a YouTube channel. My podcast, as of the recording of this podcast, my podcast is still Magnifying Brilliance, and we are going to keep that up there. But we do have a new one coming out that will be launching right around the 1st of September, which will be really fun. So there will be more of me and then more of me.
Love it. So we'll put that in the show notes for those of you listening who'd like to get a hold of Cheryl. Cheryl, thank you so much for being on the show. I like what you said at the end there. When our children make tenacious children, they're going to make us so proud. And sometimes it might be hard to see, but loving them really is the answer. And I love how you delivered that. Anything else you would let our parents or people here who are concerned about families know before we go?
I love what you said about our superpower, and my mindset coach taught me something very similar, that which we were denied usually in childhood is the gift that we are here to give. And so just for each of us to recognize we are all on our own hero's journey, and recognize that you have gifts to give. You have gifts to give your children. You have gifts to give professionally. You have gifts to give your community. And I feel like part of my superpower is I see others, and I allow myself to be seen, which was something that, if you had told me that when I was in junior high, I would have thought you were insane. Because no, I don't. And no, I can't. And my birth mother looks at what I do for a living, and she can't believe it. It's so foreign to her. Her public speaking experience entailed, she had to give a presentation when she was in elementary school, and she got up to give it before the class, and she was so nervous that she passed out. She hit her head on the desk, spent the rest of the day at the nurse, and has never spoken in public since. So when I met her right before my 50th birthday, you do what? You do what for a living? She really, truly can't believe it. And yeah, I do thank you for helping me see that in myself, saying that is a superpower now, and because it was a weakness that was allowed to be turned into a strength. And we all have that ability, all of us. I'm not unique in that. We all can do that.
I'm getting tingles as you say it. Really, that your pain becomes our superpower. Well, so the stuff that's hard for you later is what you end up blessing the world with.
Yes.
So
I love that. Very true.
thank you so much, Cheryl, for being on the show today. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, sorry. We will make sure that if you want to get a hold of Cheryl, that we'll put her contact information in the show notes. And thanks again for being with us today.